Everybody dies, don't they? Everybody come back, don't they? Isn't that so?
You tried to get into the locked drawer today, didn't you?
How do the dead come back, Mother? What's the secret?
On the Brighton Road by Richard Middleton. Slowly the sun had climbed up the hard white downs till it broke with little of the mysterious ritual of dawn upon the sparkling world of snow. There had been a hard frost during the night, and the birds who hopped about here and there with scant tolerance of life left no trace of their passage on the silver pavements. In places the sheltered caverns of the hedges broke the monotony of the whiteness that had fallen upon the coloured earth, and overhead the sky melted from orange to deep blue, from deep blue to a blue so pale that it suggested a thin paper screen rather than illimitable space. Across the level fields there came a cold, silent wind, which blew fine dust of snow from the trees, but hardly stirred the crested hedges. Once above the skyline the sun seemed to climb more quickly, and as it rose higher it began to give out a heat that blended with the keenness of the wind. It may have been this strange alternation of heat and cold that disturbed the tramp in his dreams, for he struggled for a moment with the snow that covered him, like a man who finds himself twisted uncomfortably in the bedclothes, and then sat up with staring, questioning eyes. "Lord, I thought I was in bed," he said to himself, as he took in the vacant landscape, "and all the while I was out here." He stretched his limbs and, rising carefully to his feet, shook the snow off his body. As he did so, the wind set him shivering, and he knew that his bed had been warm. "Come, I feel pretty fit," he thought. "I suppose I'm lucky to wake at all in this, or unlucky. It isn't much of a business to come back to." He looked up and saw the downs shining against the blue like the Alps on a picture postcard. "That means another 40 miles or so, I suppose," he continued grimly. "Lord knows what I did yesterday, walked till I was done, and now I'm only about 12 miles from Brighton. Damn the snow, damn Brighton, damn everything." The sun crept up higher and higher, and he started walking patiently along the road with his back turned to the hills. Am I glad or sorry that it was only sleep that took me? Glad or sorry, glad or sorry. His thoughts seemed to arrange themselves in a metrical accompaniment to the steady thud of his footsteps, and he hardly sought an answer to his question. It was good enough to walk to. Presently, when 3 milestones had loitered past, he overtook a boy who was stooping to light a cigarette. He wore no overcoat and looked unspeakably fragile against the snow. "You on the road, governor?" asked the boy huskily as he passed. "I think I am," the tramp said. "Oh, then I'll come a bit of the way with you if you don't walk too fast. It's a bit lonesome walking this time of day." The tramp nodded his head, and the boy started limping along by his side. "I'm 18, he said casually. "I bet you thought I was younger." 15, Ada said. "You'd have backed a loser. 18 last August, and I've been on the road 6 years. I ran away from home 5 times when I was a little un, and the police took me back each time. Very good to me, the police was. Now I haven't got home to run away from." "Nor have I," the tramp said calmly. "Oh, I can see what you are," the boy panted. "You're a gentleman come down. It's harder for you than for me." The tramp glanced at the limping, feeble figure and lessened his pace. "I haven't been at it as long as you have," he admitted. "Nah, I could tell that by the way you walk. You haven't got tired yet. Perhaps you expect something at the other end." The tramp reflected for a moment. "I don't know," he said bitterly. "I'm always expecting things." "You grow out of that," the boy commented. "It's warmer in London, but it's harder to come by grub. There isn't much in it, really. Still, there's a chance of meeting somebody there who will understand." "Country people are better," the boy interrupted. "Last night I took a lease of a barn for nothing and slept with the cows, and this morning the farmer ratted me out and gave me tea and toke because I was little. Of course, I score there, but in London, soup on the embankment at night, and all the rest of the time coppers moving you on. I dropped by the roadside last night and slept where I fell. It's a wonder I didn't die," the tramp said. The boy looked at him sharply. "How do you know you didn't?" he said. "I don't see it," the tramp said after a pause. "I tell you," the boy said hoarsely, "people like us can't get away from this sort of thing if we want to. Always hungry and thirsty and dog-tired and walking all the time. And yet, if anyone offers me a nice home and work, my stomach feels sick. Do I look strong? I know I'm little for my age, but I've been knocking about like this for 6 years, and you think I'm not dead? I was drowned bathing at Margate, and I was killed by a gypsy with a spike. He knocked my head right in, and twice I was froze like you last night, and a motor cut me down on this very road. And yet I'm walking along here now, walking to London to walk away from it again, because I can't help it. Dead. I tell you, we can't get away, even if we want to. The boy broke off in a fit of coughing, and the tramp paused while he recovered. "You'd better borrow my coat for a bit, Tommy," he said. "Your cough's pretty bad." "You go to hell," the boy said fiercely, puffing at his cigarette. "I'm all right. I was telling you about the road. You haven't got down to it yet, but you'll find out presently. We're all dead, all of us who's on it, and we're all tired. Yet somehow we can't leave it. There's nice smells in the summer, dust and hay, and the wind smacking your face on a hot day. And it's nice waking up in the wet grass on a fine morning. I don't know. He lurched forward suddenly, and the tramp caught him in his arms. "I'm sick," the boy whispered. "Sick." The tramp looked up and down the road, but he could see no houses or any sign of help. Yet, even as he supported the boy doubtfully in the middle of the road, a motor car suddenly flashed in the middle distance and came smoothly through the snow. "What's the trouble?" said the driver quietly as he pulled in. "I'm a doctor." He looked at the boy keenly and listened to his strained breathing. "Pneumonia," he commented. "I'll give him a lift to the infirmary, and you too if you like." The tramp thought of the workhouse and shook his head. "I'd rather walk," he said. The boy winked faintly as they lifted him into the car. "I'll meet you beyond Reigate," he muttered to the tramp. "You'll see." And the car vanished along the white road. All the morning the tramp splashed through the thawing snow, but at midday he begged some bread at the cottage door and crept in a lonely barn to eat it. It was warm in there, and after his meal he fell asleep among the hay. It was dark when he woke and started trudging once more through the slushy road. 2 miles beyond Reigate a fragile figure, slipped out of the darkness to meet him. "On the road, governor," said a husky voice. "Then I'll come a bit of the way with you if you don't walk too fast. It's a bit lonesome walking this time of day." "But the pneumonia," cried the tramp aghast. "I died at Crawley this morning," said the boy.
Everybody dies, don't they? Everybody come back, don't they? Isn't that so?
You tried to get into the locked drawer today, didn't you?
How do the dead come back, Mother? What's the secret?
Richard Barham Middleton was an English writer born to middle-class parents. His father was an engineer in 1882, just outside London, in Staines. It was outside London then, but of course it's part of London now, as London has grown. His mother didn't work, so I'm presuming from that his father's profession as an engineer made them middle class. He was apparently an unhappy child, a very sensitive boy, and he started as a bank clerk when he was about 18, didn't like it. He stuck it for 7 years and then quit and decided to become a journalist and make his living from his writing. He threw himself into the literary lifestyle and joined a club called the New Bohemians and rubbed shoulders with such writers as Arthur Machen and Henry Savage and various other well-known writers. In fact, Raymond Chandler, who wrote The Big Sleep, met Middleton, and it put him off writing because he thought he could never be as good as Middleton. Now, most of Middleton's work is lost. He has a collection of ghost stories called The Ghost Ship, and The Ghost Ship, which probably I'll read at some point, is considered to be one of the best stories in the English language, best ghost stories. Middleton was a sad character. He wanted to be a poet mainly. He didn't make it as a poet. It's hard to make a living as a poet, I believe, still. Never tried. And he wrote a poem called The Bathing Boy. And that made me think he was gay, maybe, because a lot of writers of ghost stories seem to have been gay. But in fact, when I read, there's a very short, I'll put a link to it, a biographical note, which says he spent a lot of time in London in his 20s mooning after girls who didn't love him back. So he's quite a sad character. And apparently he went to the New Bohemian Club each night and drank a lot. And then he decided, still in his 20s, to go to Brussels. I wonder what that was about, but he was described, and he killed himself there, actually, aged only 29, so that's pretty sad. And he killed himself with his chloroform, which was given to him as a treatment for his depression. I've probably mentioned, actually, I work as a mental health nurse in my proper job, and I work with suicidal people, so it's very sad how many people take overdoses of the medication that's supposed to make them better. And this was going on back in 1911. He was well regarded, and I think his story is a nice story. This is pretty short, and it's a Sixth Sense type of story. So we start off, and this tramp wakes up in the snow. It's very cold, and it's very well described. I say in the notes that I've written down that it's got a very modern feel to it, and the language feels modern. And if they'd said it was 1930s or so, I would have thought, yeah, it doesn't feel Edwardian as it is. It feels much more modern than that. It's a simple little story. He meets a cheerful Cockney child, and it becomes evident. And the child says, "You're new to this. You're a gentleman. Come down," which is terrible to come down. If you've never been up, I suppose you don't bother so much. But if you've been up and then you're reduced to walking, I should say, of course, to our American listeners, that a tramp in British English and in Ireland, I think, and in Australia, I think, as well. And then probably New Zealand. Don't know about South Africa, but I give it a good go. But Canada probably goes with America, but you never know these things. So it would be a bum, a gentleman of the road. And this was pretty common. I remember in my youth, we had tramps who wandered around and lived in barns and things like that, and they got mocked by the kids and the farmers, and people would give them sandwiches. But there don't seem to be so many of them around now. Probably all died of cold. So the whole point of this story is a very short story, and we realise by the end the tramp is actually dead. That's why I say it's a Sixth Sense type story. You know, Bruce Willis realises at the end he is the ghost. And this is a nice little trick, and I've actually used that in one of my own stories called The Hitcher, also set on a very cold, snowy night in my case. But there we are. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I've got some audiobooks out of my own stories, which I narrate. I've got my Christmas ones, which did pretty well over Christmas, actually, but nobody will be in the mood for them until next year. That's fine. I'm going to have to do some spring ones. And then I've got my Cumbrian ghost stories, which, again, is doing okay. And The Hitcher is one of those. I must give a shout out to Kate Unwin, who is my latest patron. I never know how to say that, whether they just go patron, because that's what it is, or Patreon. But whatever it is, thank you very, very much. It's always delightful. And we've had some more 5-star reviews. So please, please, please keep them coming. Because I'd cry little tears of pleasure each time I get one, as long as they're not 1 stars. But, you know, I mean, be honest, but not too brutal. Wherever you listen to them, whether it be an Apple or Stitcher or Podtail or wherever, you know, a review goes a long way, because it gets more people to consider the podcast. They look at it and they see the stars and they think, oh, it's worth a listen. And that's what I would like to happen. So thank you very much for your support and your shares and your comments and your ratings and your Patreons and your cups of coffee. And thank you very much. And you keep doing that. I'll keep reading it. How about that for a deal? So, but I like the sound of my own voice anyway, as everybody who knows me will say. So can you stop me? Can you stop me? We're hoping to do some more live storytelling stuff in the spring, round about where I live. People are doing this all over, so look in your own area, you might find it. I'm thinking we might do a selection of vampire stories. I've been watching the BBC's Dracula. I think there's on the Facebook page, we've got a link to that. And that's been a lot of fun, both gruesome and camp at the same time. So, but that's right. And I'm going to go and sit down with my mum tonight and watch it, because she's a bit too scared to watch it on her own after we've been to see Little Women. So I'm still on holiday, so it's good times. Okay, ramble. I'll be back next week.